Most of my clients are homeowners in the UK who have no construction experience. They've never hired an architect or set foot on a building site. So I spend a lot of my time explaining the process. If this sounds like you, stay tuned. I've run my own architecture practice in Edinburgh since 2009, and over the past 3 years I've spoken to hundreds of homeowners right across the UK through my online consultation service. I focus on renovation and house extension projects, and I've lost count of the number of people who were all set to mess up their home. Now, I'm not talking about using the wrong type of insulation or installing a boiler that's too small for the property. I'm talking about big strategic mistakes that can doom a project no matter how good your builder is. If you have renovated or extended a house in the UK and lived to tell the tale, let me know in the comments if any of these mistakes sound familiar. I've also put chapter timestamps below so you can skip ahead if you want. Let's get started. Seeing the architect as someone who just does drawings. I get emails all the time asking how much the drawings cost. Now, on the face of it, that's a reasonable question. I also meet clients who tell me exactly what they want me to draw for them. And if it's their home, you might think, fair enough. After all, architects do drawings, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. Sure, drawings happen, but they are not the point. You are not paying for a product, you are paying for a process. Think of it like going to see your doctor. If you run into the surgery and tell the doctor to write you a prescription for some drug you heard about online, why wouldn't they? After all, doctors do prescriptions, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. I like to use the example of speaking to a doctor because everyone has been there, but relatively few homeowners have hired an architect. And to get the most from your architect, you have to see them the same as going to a GP. Your doctor will ask you where it hurts, look at your medical history, do some tests, and arrive at a diagnosis. With that, they can prescribe the best treatment. It's the same when working with an architect. I'm going to ask what's wrong with your house and how you live in that home. Do you have a family, and if so, what stage are they at? Do you entertain, or are you private? Do you work from home? Do you have hobbies that require somewhere for large items like grand pianos or hot air balloons? I've had clients with both of these. I'm going to look at your budget, the local planning guidance, and building regulations. I'm going to work out what you need and how to get as much as possible for you within all of the constraints. I'm also going to ask about your experiences and influences. Are there other homes you've seen that inspire you? This is a collaboration. We each bring something to the table. And one of the most important things your architect brings is a network of contacts. An experienced local architect will know all the best builders, engineers, suppliers, and specialists in the area who can help make your project happen. They are also likely to know how the local planning department operates. Homeowners who are looking to get drawings done at the lowest possible price can miss out on all of this, and they can end up paying someone to produce drawings for designs that don't make the best use of their home. A classic example of this is planning to build a 2-story extension. There is nothing inherently wrong with 2-story extensions. I've built a few of them myself, but I've lost count of the number of people who tell me right at the outset that they must have a 2-story extension. They start with a solution without really thinking about the problem. Let me explain what I mean. If you own a conventional 2-story house in the UK, it probably has the living space on the ground floor and the bedrooms on the upper floor. So if you need more bedrooms, they have to be on the upper floor, so a 2-story extension is inevitable, right? Wrong, 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 wrong. A well-designed house should have a clear split between public and private spaces. The public spaces are where you feel comfortable taking a guest, and private areas are the bedrooms, bathrooms, utility, and storage spaces. When you enter the house, it should be clear how you reach the public spaces in your home, and you should not have to pass through private space to get there. Let me show you what I mean. This is a 1930s 2-story house in Edinburgh. The bedrooms are on the upper floor and the living space is on the ground floor. The client needed another bedroom and a better kitchen, living, and dining space. When we first met, he wanted to build a 2-story extension or convert the loft. The roof is too small to make it worth converting, and building a 2-story extension to house an extra bedroom would cost more than the budget. I came up with a more effective solution for my client. We built a 1-story extension down the side of the house with a kitchen, living, and dining space at the rear. The main entrance to the house is now in the extension. The existing entrance stays where it is, but it's not where you take a guest. This allows the existing front room to become a bedroom. The house now has a clear split between public and private. The existing house has all the bedrooms and the new extension is where the living space is. People often don't appreciate how disruptive it is to connect an extension to an existing house. And if your extension is 2 stories, that connection work gets exponentially more expensive. A 2-story extension would cost a lot more to build, be far more challenging to get planning permission. It's not that a 2-story extension wouldn't work, it's just there are easier ways to solve the problem. The new living room in this project is really nice, and the glazing was supplied by Sunflex UK, the sponsor of today's video. More on them later, but next up is a mistake I see people making when changing the internal layout of their homes. Worrying too much about load-bearing walls. I've helped hundreds of homeowners alter the internal layout of their properties, and most of them get really worried about load-bearing walls. Now don't get me wrong, taking down load-bearing walls requires input from structural engineers and the work should be carried out by a competent builder. But I think the average person sees this in the same way they might imagine open heart surgery. It's a really big deal, while experienced construction professionals see it more like getting stitches, not without its risks, but it's an everyday procedure. The reason this matters is that homeowners might deliberately avoid changing load-bearing walls when planning alterations to the layout of their homes, and that decision will dramatically reduce the options available to them for no good reason. The cost difference between taking down a load-bearing wall and a non-load-bearing wall is usually around 40%. Regardless of the structural status of an internal wall, when you knock one, it damages the floor, the ceiling and the adjacent walls, as well as any electrics or plumbing in the area. It turns out the cost of fixing that damage takes up most of the cost, and I don't think it's worth avoiding the difference in price when altering a layout. Don't worry about load-bearing walls. Have an experienced architect, qualified structural engineer, and competent builder take care of it for you and get the best possible layout for your home. If you want to know more about the cost of demolishing internal walls, I made this video and there's a link in the description. And since we are talking about costs, one of the biggest mistakes you can make in a project is not getting construction costs early in the process. House extensions going over budget, renovation projects costing more than estimated. We've all heard the horror stories about building work being more expensive than expected. But how do you avoid this? Before COVID, I regularly provided clients with a cost estimate at an early stage in the design process. I used cost breakdowns from previous jobs to predict how much new projects might cost. And this worked really well. It allowed clients to have a good idea of how much a design would cost before committing to planning or building regulations approvals. But after the supply chain chaos, inflation and unpredictability of the past few years, I decided to stop estimating construction costs. I just couldn't use previous jobs to predict the cost of future projects. I still advise my clients to get construction cost estimated as early as possible in the process to check the design isn't over budget before committing money to making applications. If you leave it too late in the process, you might have to redesign your project to reduce costs, then go back through the planning process and building regulations approval again, and that wastes both time and money. A few of my clients have worked with quantity surveyors to do estimating, but most of the time I work with builders to establish the costs. But doing this early in the process before getting planning approval requires trust between the builder and the architect. If the builders are going to commit time and resources to pricing a job, they want to be reasonably sure the architect can get this design through the approval system. Now, this is another good reason to value an architect's role in your project. If an average homeowner calls up a building contractor and asks them to price a potential job, the builder is unlikely to take them seriously. There are different ways to produce estimates for house extensions and renovations, but keep in mind changing anything about a project gets more expensive the further along that project is. And by far the most expensive mistake a homeowner can make is asking the contractor to change things during construction. The 3 most dangerous words on a building site are, "Can we just ... I warn all my clients about it, but it still happens. I might inspect a building site once every week or 2, but it's the client's home, so they can speak to the builder every day. The problems start when the client asks the contractor to change things from how they are shown on my drawings. I'm not even talking about big things like making the building taller or adding another bathroom. I'm talking about small things like adding a light switch or electric socket. To understand why this can cost more than you expect, you need to understand how small building contractors operate. In 16 years of doing this work, I have never met a builder who employs an electrician. Building contractors across the UK rely on subcontractors. Electricians and plumbers are booked weeks in advance, and so are joiners, plasterers, and decorators. You might think a few extra sockets or switches won't cost much, and on their own, you might be right. But what happens if the extra time taken to fit them means the joiner can't finish sheeting the walls that day, then the plasterers can't start work the following day, and the decorator can't begin work next week? If each of these trades are subcontractors, they have a limited window of opportunity to work on your job, because they have commitments to other builders across town. If any of these trades can't do their part on the day it was arranged, they will leave your site and go work on someone else's project. They won't come back to your site until they have finished that other person's job, and that delay could last weeks. You can't blame the electrician for this. They aren't responsible for organising the other trades. The electrician might not realise the disruption caused by those few extra sockets and switches. The real drama starts when the main contractor charges extra preliminaries. These are the costs the builder pays for things needed to make your job happen, but which don't remain part of the finished building. Preliminaries include insurance, skips, scaffolding, and management fees. If you make a change to the agreed design, that incurs extra time. Most contractors charge additional preliminaries, and even on small jobs, these can run into thousands of pounds. This is why it's so important to spend time at the outset of the process really thinking about the design. It costs a lot less to change some drawings than to change a building halfway through construction. The further along the process is, the more expensive changes become. If you are thinking about altering or extending your property, check out the sponsor of today's video. Sunflex UK design and manufactures high-quality aluminium windows and doors in the UK. I've used them on several of my own projects, and I believe they offer a great balance between cost and quality. Don't just take my word for it though, check out these videos I made, which include the cost. There's a link up here and in the description below. And if you would like my advice about your project, no matter where it is in the UK, check out the reallifearchitecture.co.uk website. You can book a consultation with me and get specific advice about your property. There's a link in the description, and please read the terms and conditions before you book. If you found this video useful, check out this playlist and be sure to drop a like. It really helps the channel.